can you build something that people find valuable?
No matter what, I will figure out how to make this idea work.
It was not scalable. So we went without salary for 10 months.
As a non-technical founder, how did you make your idea a reality?
I don't want the life you have. I'm not going to take your advice or suggestions for how I should live mine.
Today on Uninvested, I'll be speaking with Eddy Connors, a 23-year-old multi-time non-technical founder who is addressing the restaurant food surplus problem with his newest startup, Goodie Bag. He's currently closing out a $1 million pre-seed round to truly make a difference in this world. Just to start, tell me your story.
Yeah, let's do it. Well, nice to be here, Sahil. I'm Eddy, co-founder and CEO of Goodie Bag. What we do is we help connect people to local shops, perfectly good, unsold food at discounted prices for pickup. Ultimately, making sure good food doesn't go to waste and then giving people more affordable options on local food. I'm happy to predate myself on how we arrived at Goodie Bag.
Yeah, that'd be awesome. We'd love to know the full story.
Grew up in a town called Bronxville, New York, 1 square mile town outside New York City. Pretty popular for people in that region to get into like wealth management, more so the finance and banking industry, but never really kind of resonated with me as the path I wanted to pursue professionally. And so ended up taking a gap year out of high school and spent a couple months backpacking throughout Indonesia by homestay, which was a really awesome way to just have a incredibly different experience than the previous 17 years of my life, you know? And so I was living in some rural areas, some jungles, beaches, fell in love with the country, fell in love with the people. It was easily some of the most beautiful places I've ever been able to experience. Also exposed to the juxtaposition between these pristine natural climates with some of the most prevalent pervasive plastic pollution that exists. So Indonesia is unique and not a lot of people know about the country, which is part of the reason I went to. It's the 4th largest country in terms of population, but it's also one of the most biodiverse countries. It's something like home to 50% of the world's biodiversity. I was 17 at the time, very impressionable, right? And I started becoming much more aware of how foreign industry impacts our world at large and particularly degrades the environment. And so I saw a lot of plastic pollution riddle these communities, realized that the fashion industry was the 2nd largest polluter, only behind the oil industry. I was always a minimalist guy. I just wanted to be able to like get out in the morning and then stay out until I came back to go to bed. So my first company I started was coming back from the States, sustainable athleisure wear brand called BerBeda, which means be different in Indonesian. And the idea was I wanted to create a company that embodied the business practices that were necessary to create sustainable change. I was making athletic shorts from recycled ocean plastic and then ethically manufacturing them in Indonesia. That was kind of my first go at solo founding a company. Ultimately, it led me to study strategy and entrepreneurship, kind of like more formally at an elite school of business at CU Boulder. Ended up meeting my co-founder, who was my college roommate for now Goodie Bag, which we ideated right after graduating college.
I also had the opportunity to go to Southeast Asia for like 4 months, actually over a year ago now. And that trip really opened me up, gave me a different perspective, on my life, on the world. Coming out of that trip, you went to, college at CU Boulder and graduated in 2.5 years. So take me through your thought process of wanting to speed run college. Was it I just want to build a company, or was there something else driving that?
There's nothing that's been more impactful for me than travel. That particular experience, like immersing myself in that new culture. And so I love hearing when other people also have experiences at young ages in general.
Yeah. At the time, I didn't realize, I came back, I was like, oh, I thought it'd be a totally changed person. And right when I came back, I'm like, oh, I'm the same person. But having a retrospective look now that's been over a year, I'm a completely different person. My values, what I want out of life has completely changed.
For me, the biggest realization too was that there's nothing preventing me from achieving my most ambitious goals coming back to the United States. It truly is privilege and that opportunity to have access to education, to funding. We can talk about that too, what that looks like. But yeah, just like the climate, the ability to create your own company, and now living in the times that we live in, it's never been easier before. So that also kind of just fires me up in general. And I know that that's going to be how I spend the rest of my life, is creating companies that align just with the impact I want to have. So yeah, I came back to the States, started BerBeda for the rest of my gap year, knew that I wanted to pursue entrepreneurship and still wanted the college experience, the network and value that comes from that. So I started looking at universities that had an entrepreneurial program. The lead school of business, which is CU Boulder's business school, they had a really strong emphasis on entrepreneurship and innovation at the time. I got into the business school, and then also I wanted to be in an environment that was conducive to an active lifestyle. And so growing up, particularly Westchester County, the nature closest to me, it was the dog park. It just wasn't part of the culture to like go and hike or do anything outdoors. So that ultimately led me there. Sahil was both the entrepreneurial program and then just being one of the more beautiful places of the country. I was a freshman in 2019. And like you mentioned, graduated 2.5 years later because I wanted to get out and build. Didn't resonate with like, oh, college is the best 4 years of your life. That stuff never just like sat with me well. Like it never was aligned with what I thought life was about. It was more of a stepping stone. That's how I viewed it. I viewed it as a stepping stone ultimately to accelerate the achievement of my goals.
Kind of talked about this when you're talking about your trip, but also was it ever the possibility to like go into like a corporate world or even a startup role and get like 2 years of experience before trying it out on your own? Because I'm sure you got that, whether it be your parents, friends, like, hey, maybe don't go out into the don't go out into the entrepreneurial world, have zero salary, and maybe get a base somewhere.
For sure. Rarely people are encouraging on the path that, like you said, that requires a financial sacrifice. And I remember taking a gap year and people being like, oh, like Eddy, like, and these are parents of like peers or whatnot being like Eddy, like it's gonna work out, like don't worry. When I told them I'm going on a gap year, because I was the only guy in my grade, I'm pretty sure, to take a gap year. And so it was just inherently, by being a less common path, it was viewed upon as less than, it's like an inferior path to take. And that was the common narrative. Candidly, like even at that age, at 17, I was like, fuck it, like I don't want the life you have. I'm not going to take your advice or suggestions for how I should live mine. I had that really strong sense of self, which has definitely served me over time, because you have to be convicted. Otherwise, there's a million reasons why you should not do this, why you should not start a company. It's fucking hard. All the questions of what are you doing next? What job do you have lined up? I had a little bit of breathing room since I graduated early, where not as many people were like concerned about, are you going right into the workforce? Major props and blessings to my family and my parents who do support me. They supported my decision to take a gap year. They supported my decision to start a company. I've been fortunate in that circumstance to have them as people who ultimately believe in me and know that whatever I set my mind to, I'll achieve. I mean, I remember Sahil, like after graduating, looking at some jobs and being like, fuck, I don't want to go down this route. But BerBeda is not at a point where it's like generating meaningful revenue for me. And I didn't feel compelled to like double down on that. Ultimately, highly concentrated industry when you go into fashion, and just wasn't really like what I wanted to do. Like I more so liked it from a aspect of creating like a minimalist product. Like I still wear the shorts today. What it would have taken to succeed in that industry didn't excite me. It would have been all marketing. You would have really had to differentiate through the marketing side of the business. So I just wasn't at a place where it's like, oh, I want to take that forward, or even that I had like confidence that would be able to succeed in this concentrated marketplace. I didn't raise money for it or anything like that. Candidly, I was sitting with it. I did not know what my path was going to be, but I did know that I had full confidence in my ability to execute, to create, if I had an alignment and a desire to do it. It was just, what am I going to do? And I knew that entrepreneurship had the most creative potential of a path for me, because there's no ceiling. There's no one telling you what to do. It's just the market. Can you build something that people find valuable and then ultimately turn that into a sustainable business? The opportunity to design something from the start that was going to create positive value for others and the planet, that consumed my ideation. And so it wasn't until my co-founder, who was my college roommate, Luke, at the time, we went through this 10-week startup summer program after graduating, and we ideated a business concept that ultimately became Goodie Bag, won that program, and haven't looked back since.
So did you need a certain level of traction to keep going? Like, did you have like, we have to hit these milestones, or I'm going to do something else, or I'm going to go get a job? Or was it like, no matter what, I will figure out how to make this idea work?
So not until we went through the program, Sahil, did I have full conviction on the business idea? So part of that 10 weeks was like doing the market analysis. What is the market opportunity for this? What is the revenue potential? What are similar concepts that have failed? What are similar concepts that have succeeded? And so by the time we went through the ideation of Goodie Bag and resonated with the mission, which was there's food that's being wasted, there's people that are wanting more affordable options on food, and local shops need support. They're the backbone of the country. They're the heart of the communities. I'm a strong believer in overall decentralization of industry as a means to be able to create more equitable and harmonious outcomes. I think anytime we consolidate an industry without transparency, negative outcomes happen. Whether you want to look at, and let's take food, big ag, right? Like it's still largely consolidated. Something like 85% of the food supply comes from less than 6 companies. And these companies aren't taking into consideration consumers' health to drive their business practices. And it kills our planet, it kills people. And so getting into this industry, it fired me up. Like I knew that there needs to be innovation in the food system. The fact that 40% of all food being produced is being wasted, that's largely inefficient. And so I had conviction on the larger opportunity. One, it was a problem worthwhile to solve, like somewhat like this needs to be solved. So I had that conviction on the larger opportunity. And then going into our specific solution, which was a marketplace solution, that became clear once we talked to a bunch of shops in Boulder, Colorado, that they were interested and they had a need. So we got validation. Yes, there's surplus product that's going to waste. Yes, there's an interest if we can provide the solution for people to use it. Then we looked at the larger market opportunity and saw that similar models were successful in Europe and that the United States was slow to follow this next phase of innovation, and that there was a huge opportunity to do it better in the United States and tailor it to the unique needs of independent retailers in the United States and consumers. And so once we won that program in August, we were like, okay, what are our other options? I would regret not giving this a full shot.
Ideas are a dime a dozen when it comes down to it, and you had a great idea. So as a non-technical founder, how did you make your idea a reality?
Dude, so we partnered with the dev shop, got our MVP. So a dev shop, it's a third-party engineering firm. There's thousands of them out there. There's a lot of horror stories that go with working with dev shops, typically because there's just lack of accountability in general from just a blanket statement. And we experienced that. So we had a dev shop, really cost-effective way to get to market. So less than like about $15,000 total investment. We had our MVP in market and we made our first sale less than 3 months after winning that program. January 2nd, 2023, we made our first sale from a local pizzeria. They had leftover slices and our software would allow them to say, hey, I have a goodie bag. Come get it in the next 2 hours and it's 50% off. And then we would send a text message at the time to people who joined our wait list who would get a text. This pizzeria called BerBeda has a goodie bag at 50% off. Someone bought it and they showed up. And so for us, my co-founder, Sahil, is very visual design oriented. So he does all our UI, UX prototyping. So we prototyped what the platform should look like. And then we just collaborated with a dev shop to actually do the back-end coding of bringing it to life. And so that was a really cost-effective way to get traction to demonstrate a degree of a need, a degree of product market fit. Like, yes, people are purchasing what we're offering. It was not scalable. We ran into so many technical issues the next 10 months, got blessed through an introduction to a different development team that we rebuilt the entire application with and released like an actual native mobile application. Looking back on it, we had to go down that path. We had to do that. Otherwise, you never start the iteration cycle to be able to inform, get the feedback you need to evolve the business more effectively. And so if we did it again, a technical co-founder from the start would have been awesome, for sure. Not letting that prevent us from getting into market was one of the best decisions we made early on.
Looking at it today, you've raised, close to $1 million. You told me you're almost finished closing up a pre-seed round. How did you balance getting sales versus starting to go investors? And what was that? When did you make that switch?
Team is the answer to that. Sahil, we're four full-time. Two co-founders, Luke, my former college roommate, and then this woman, Brianna, a 44-year-old serial entrepreneur, just a badass woman. And then one of my older brothers is full-time sales. And so being able to rely on them to keep the ball moving forward, my brother is killing it with increasing our growth through his sales efforts. It freed up my time to be able to focus more so on investment. And it's a full-time job, fundraising, especially in this climate. So we went through the TechStars Farm to Fork program, which took place July to October of last year, 2023. And they prep you a lot. So they kind of drill you to be ready to fundraise post-program. So getting all your documents in order, getting the pitch down, going through investor meetings. And so that was a great learning experience and network builder for me. So coming out of it, we felt really confident in our story and how to convey it to investors. But ultimately what helped us most, Sahil, was continuing to grow, getting revenue, going in, launching more markets, getting people paying for our product. There's no substitute to that. And that has served us really well.
At what point were you like, we need to fundraise now? Was it right after the program, or it's like after you hit some certain threshold?
So we went without salary for 10 months out of my co-founder's parents' basement. We were eating out of our savings. It was a grind. I wasn't doing anything else other than building this company, working out, keeping care of my mental. Then getting into TechStars, that was our first kind of like largest check. They give about $120K to all their portcos. And so we just took a small salary for ourselves through program. And then a couple months after, and then we were back to, all right, we're all salary and we got to build, because we weren't at a point where we could like bootstrap. Like our revenue wasn't meaningful enough to be able to cover our costs, our burn. And so we knew that in order to achieve the growth we wanted to achieve, we needed an injection of capital. So not every company needs to fundraise or needs to go the VC backed route. For the goals that we set and for our particular business model, it made sense for us to go through a funding round. And so it was obvious, Sahil. It's like, okay, we can't grow. Being cash strapped is limiting our growth. We've demonstrated our ability to go to market effectively, and people are buying our product and we're making money off of it. But in order to scale this, we need an injection of capital. In order to continue building our product, we need to be able to pay our engineers. And so capital was just, it's the lifeblood, right? You can't sustain yourself without capital as a startup. And so we kicked off our fundraise.
Going back to your sales tack, you said your brother's killing it, but bring me to the early days. What were some of the scrappy things that you did to really succeed? To get that initial traction?
We would just talk to business owners. We would go around town, walk into restaurants, ask for the owner, ask to talk to the general manager. A lot of face-to-face, and it's still face-to-face on the supply side. We still go door to door, talking to independent restaurants, pitching our service to them. So it's very much a hustle-based business. But then on the demand side, some of like the early stuff we did was do classic like tabling events on campus and just give people like cards to join the wait list for a Goodie Bag. And that's how we got our first like 400 people on the wait list. Was just like in person. We would do like, there was a housing event that we were allowed to go to at CU, and we had like this cornhole set up. And we were like, if you hit it in the cornhole, we'll give you, I forget what it was, like $100 cash, I think it was. But in order to attempt, you had to sign up for our wait list. And so we just got like a bunch of people on the wait list that way. Nobody ended up hitting the cornhole. So we didn't have to pay out the $100 marketing expense, but just scrappy stuff like that, just like in person, not scalable by any means, but just like, we need our first couple hundred people on the wait list. Let's go to where they are. And for us, we were targeting college students heavily. Facebook groups, we did digitals, kind of free, scrappy guerrilla stuff like that, and then ultimately found more effective ways over time.
Looking back at your journey, which has been a very long journey, regardless of how young you are, if there's anything you would change, what would it be?
It's interesting to give an honest answer to that question, because I do feel that the path that I've experienced with Goodie Bag has led us to the circumstance we are right now, which is we have a phenomenal team. We have a phenomenal go-to-market strategy, and we're poised for a lot of growth. Could we have done things differently to get us added to a different position? Like, there were entire quote unquote failures, like mistakes and failures that we made where we went to a market and that market just didn't work for us and we had to pull out and we wasted money and time. But that's necessary for our ultimate growth as a company, you know? And so I'm hesitant, Sahil, to say like, oh, I wouldn't have worked with that dev shop in the beginning and would have waited until we found a better dev shop so that we didn't have to rebuild the platform. Like, I don't think I would have done that in retrospect. Like, that allowed myself to really become a much more effective leader and a much more effective project manager, like to be able to learn like so I think ultimately that's kind of the belief I adopt, Sahil, is that if you're familiar with like the saying amor fati, it's a Latin phrase for in love with one's fate. I don't think that everything is supposed to always be an up and up. You know, I think there's a lot of learnings in the down cycles or in the suffering. And I really do believe that. And so our path to date has served as an opportunity for us to grow, and particularly myself to grow as an individual personally, and then also professionally become a more effective CEO and leader. And so I wouldn't have changed it. Are there things in hindsight that we did that failed? Oh yeah. Yeah, for sure. But yeah, without those, we wouldn't have eventually iterated to where we are now.
Not always hockey stick growth in the game of entrepreneurship, even though some people like to say it is. But I do want to ask one last question I ask everyone. Throughout the years, has there been any routine that you've maintained?
I've started my morning with a cold shower for the past 3 years. Every morning, I just wake up and get in the cold shower. I'm a huge cold plunge person as well. When I was in Colorado, I would go into the Boulder Creek in the wintertime. It would be brick cold. And it was just a really awesome way to gain a sense of clarity and motivation. And so I've stuck with that practice most religiously or ritualistically in my life. And then I intermittent fast most days. And for me, it's just how can I be the most productive and capable version of myself day in, day out. And it's what tools allow me to be in that state. And so for me, cold water, exercise, fasting, and nutrition.
Those practices seem to be working. Well, I wish Goodie Bag the best. But with that, I'm Sahil.
I'm Eddy.
And this is Uninvested. Thank you.
This is a personal video. Any views or opinions represented in this video are personal and do not represent those of people, institutions, or organizations we may or may not be associated with in a professional or personal capacity. The views expressed are for entertainment purposes only and not to be misinterpreted as actionable investment advice.